Welcome to Creators Cafe. I'm your host, Jessica Payne. I'm a performer, performance coach, and multi-hyphenate creator. I'm going to be bringing you conversations with some of my favorite creators where we talk about the sublime and the specifics of the creative journey. So grab a drink, get cozy. Let's go. My guest, Sam DiSalvo, calls herself a writer with actor and comedian tendencies. Sam has been featured in SF Sketchfest, San Diego Her Film Challenge, and So Say We All's VAMP. When Sam isn't performing, she loves having existential conversations and baking. Sam has appeared in national commercials, new works readings, has written for top companies, and worked with A-list musicians, and she writes my favorite Substack newsletter titled Honestly Though, THO. Sam is based in LA, but if you happen to be in San Francisco on February 1st, she's performing in VAMP at Sketchfest at the Marsh Theater at 9:30 p.m. Sam is hilarious and very caring and has such good things to say about grief and life, and it's somehow all funny. So I can't wait for you to join my conversation with my dear friend, Sam DiSalvo. Sam DiSalvo, welcome to Creators Cafe.
Thank you.
Cheers.
First sip.
What are you drinking?
It is cold brew with oat milk.
Nice. And I'm drinking a iced latte from Dialogue Cafe.
Dialogue.
I love it.
One day sponsor? Soon sponsor?
Oh, please. Come on, Dialogue.
I know. They should. Because have they sponsored in some way all of these?
Oh, most. Yeah, they're across the street. So unless I'm out and about, they are my go-to. And they're fantastic. So
I hear also a lot of celebrity sightings at Dialogue, and I think of you every time. I'm just
like right next door.
Yeah, I wonder if you're always running into people there.
I think there's a lot of reality stars and like design people that I think I know their work, but maybe don't recognize them because my mother-in-law comes into town and she's like, oh, that's this person, this person, this person. I'm like, oh yeah, they're here all the time. And I have no idea who they are.
You're just like, oh, the regulars? And
yes.
She's like, no, they're regulars on the television.
Exactly. I'm like bad at LA that way. It has to be somebody pretty famous in the 90s for me to be positive that I knew that they were a celebrity.
Yes, I feel the same way. Like, I feel like I would be in a room with like actually very popular people and not know. And then I'll tell Jake later, I'll be like, I saw Hillary Duff at the corner.
Yours is way cooler. I've seen like Danny DeVito, who I adore, and
that's awesome.
Fabio, and like Mel Gibson, and like
big
Jay
90s.
Leno.
Oh,
like,
whoa, yeah.
Like big stars, but like oddly 90s people.
Yes. Also, I've also seen Fabio in San Francisco on the street.
That's so
wild.
Funny.
You can be in touch with Fabio. He's a man of the people.
He's a man of the people. He's out and about, and his hair looks great.
Always, yeah. I'm like, delivers, you know? Yeah, he's still like romantic novel after all these years.
He really is. Yeah. I mean, for perhaps probably the same crowd as he started with. So,
yeah, exactly.
The generation just moves.
Moms and grandmas probably would be excited, more excited than us.
Hopefully. So as obvious, you are like such a charming conversationalist and so nice. Witty and fun and easy to talk to. But when you think of yourself like officially as a creator, how do you think of yourself? What titles do you use?
I would say primarily writer these days. So I still do like personal essay type writing, I guess, on my Substack. I'm like working on like some scripts, and I'm a copywriter by trade. So it's primarily writer these days. I still do some performing, like for storytelling and stuff like that. But yeah, creative writer.
I love it.
All encompassing that way.
For somebody that doesn't know what Substack is, what is it and why did you choose that format?
Great. It's so funny because I feel like I've struggled, but I just have to lean in. But it's a blog. And I think because it's such a like early 2000s term, I'm like, it's not a Zanga or a Life Journal. But I feel like
Fabio approves. It's fine.
Fabio's like, wow, I can't believe you have a blog. I assume he is also still living in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
But I think what's appealing about Substack to me is that I had friends and I had just people I followed that were like also kind of like me, where they were like creative writers that didn't have a totally like one niche thing. So I feel like on certain websites, maybe like the New Yorker or whatever, if you have an opinion piece, it's more like about a certain thing in pop culture. And what I was seeing on Substack was appealing because it wasn't tied to any one niche. And you could kind of be more free with it. Plus, it has this email functionality. So when you publish something, you can send it out to your list like right away. Instead of like Medium, which I was also using before, where it's just a standard blog and you can share it on all of your socials, but it's not going to go to people unless they click on it. And there is kind of something nice where I know people at least will receive it. So even if they don't read it, or as I do, and I've heard my friends say, they don't read it right away. They bookmark it and then come back to it, you know, sometimes weeks later. But then it is also nice because people will be like, I finally read it. Cool. And it keeps on going. So that's nice too.
Oh, that's true. I'm totally a batch processor. Like I'll like see things as they come in while I'm doing other things and be like, oh, cool, I'll come to that. And then I do, and I'll read a bunch in a row.
I do the same thing with Substack, and I bookmark all of them. This is very, I'll look into my process.
Yeah, I love it.
I have something in email that just reads, and I put everything in there. And then when I have time, I go through and just read everything. It can be for months though. So, yeah.
That's cool. Do you, this is a totally behind the scenes, when you're running your Substack, can you see who opens things?
God, it's actually very robust. And I was telling someone that it tracks the weirdest stuff very closely. So yes, I can see who has opened it of my subscribers, who has sent it to people, how many times they've opened one, which I think is kind of what we're saying, where you might open it and see how long it is and then come back to it later. So you can also see if people have opened it like 6 times. So you're like, wow, they really had to commit to get through. But yeah, it's super robust, and you can... Substack does this, which I think is still kind of in beta, but it gives star ratings to each of your subscribers as to who are your 4-star subscribers and who are maybe your 1-stars, where they subscribed and they read one, but you might want to nudge them. And I'm like, I don't think this is true, because even like sometimes people I know who like hit me up very frequently, I'll be like, why are they a 1-star? And then like I'm even like a 3-star. I'm like, I'm writing them. So I think that feature is funny, and I don't know if I need to know, but I also don't think it's that good at tracking.
That's so interesting. I didn't know any of this until I started kind of getting behind the scenes with, content creation. And I realized how important it is, if you are supporting somebody, to like open their stuff, even if they don't read it, just because that helps their numbers and everything. So I do, whenever I see it, I try to like open it, but then remember to read it whenever I have time. And it's just one of those like, I don't know. I'm simultaneously grateful to have the tools to see what's working and what isn't working, and suspicious of how we're like rewarding things as a society.
I agree.
So it's interesting.
Because even like you're saying, like with the opens, you don't know if they're reading it or if they're doing the thing that I do, and I know everyone does, where you check to see what's about and how long it is, and not for me. Or you don't read it and you say you'll come back and you don't. So I really don't know. I think honestly it just has to do with who comments on it, and like I base it on how out of the woodwork someone is to comment on it too. Sometimes if people are really close with me and they always comment, I'm like, that's very nice and very supportive.
Yeah.
But if a person I don't know, which for my Substack, because it's so new, is rare, but we're hoping for 2024 to get more of those. But there are people I don't know who follow and read, and if they're very excited by it, I'm like, oh, cool. There was no personal tie,
Oh, yeah, they're not doing it because I'm their friend.
Yeah, because they're going to see me in a few days or something. They're like, oh, we better talk about the Substack. So,
got to research my friends.
I know. Yeah, honestly. So I think like it's just now, because the numbers are honestly so low, it's just kind of like checking who's responding and how people are responding, or if people like send it to someone. Sometimes my friends are nice, and they'll say like, I have a friend who I think would really like this, so I sent it to them. And so it's cool. It's all word of mouth at this point.
Yeah, true. And I think that's that's something that a lot of creators are trying to figure out as they move maybe from more traditional forms of art into the digital world is like, how do you, without feeling super markety, build a authentic client base? And so I think that, word of mouth and just encouraging people to like, if there's a Substack that you love, like send it to your friend that you know would love it. And if you, or like post it and all of those kind of things, like I think really do help and give us that community support that we would do naturally, but now has moved online. Yeah. So that's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you're bringing up something too that I think about is just like being a good reader and viewer is, and so I try to find Substacks that I, don't know the person writing it or just things that seem within my interests and not only read them, but like them. And they have something called restacking, which means you put in basically the Twitter function of Substack. Okay. So other Substack users will see it. You can like restack a quote and then be like, I love this because of XYZ. And so trying to show that you're kind of an active user as well.
So it's kind of like if somebody's more familiar with Instagram, it's like reposting somebody else's or sharing somebody else's info. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I watch a couple of friends' Substacks, but it isn't something that I've gotten into that ecosphere of. Yeah.
It's deep, honestly. There's so much stuff. And so many people, I would say, over the past couple years have moved over to it, like from Medium or even from YouTube, because they have a lot of functionality that supports YouTube posts and also podcasts. So it kind of is like a more fuller product to support all of that.
Okay, I'm totally interested.
I work for Substack.
I was just going to say, Substack is also sponsoring today's podcast. Thank you, Substack.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? One day, Dialogue, Substack.
I love it.
It would,
Let's do this.
A worthy podcast for them to support. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I love your writing in your Substack because it's so conversational and you feel like my cool friend.
Oh,
like,
wow. Thank you. Wow. Long time to get here. It was not always the cool friend at all.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was going to mock myself, but then I realized, no, like I actually have a lot of cool friends, but you're the cool friend I would go to for like recommendations, the good music, the good podcasts, the good writing. And so I would say Sam can be your cool friend if you follow her Substack.
Wow, thank you. Yeah.
So you're really good at lists and you're really good at finding things, but then also connecting them to like, it's not a direct, if you like this, you'll like this. Like you're not an algorithm, but you find those connections and weave them really naturally and conversationally, which I appreciate.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I wanted this project, I guess, to feel also less polished than other things that I had been writing and be an outlet where I could be very blunt and very conversational without it. I think being a copywriter, like part of the job is that you're constantly edited to fit other voices. And I think after a while I was like, oh, I'd like to have something that just is my voice and it's fine, and not something where it's like, we have to fit this kind of vibe. It's like, oh, okay, I wanted that outlet too. So yeah.
That makes so much sense. And I think it does have such a distinct vibe and kind of what you were saying at the beginning where like the Substack itself was attractive because it wasn't about this particular opinion or this particular topic that you had to stay on. You're the connecting thread.
Right.
Like it's you and what you think and what your voice is.
Yeah.
And that makes it really powerful, especially if someone connects with kind of your voice and your opinions. It's great.
Yeah, it's true. If you don't like me, you will not like the Substack. But if you do like that, then you get like every facet or just like the taste, like you said, if you like that kind of thing, or if you're interested in trying out new things. I think that, again, is what I liked, what I was reading on Substack, is that I've thought about this over the past year, like, do I need to create a niche or a series so that way people who aren't my friends know why to come to it? And I've just been seeing so much on Substack that you don't. Like, very successful creators on there do not have a niche or an expected way of delivering stuff.
That's so freeing.
I know, and they still have a huge following. So I'm hoping to get to that point and not, because I think I still feel sort of like, you should deliver something that people can kind of depend on and get to know you for. And I kind of want to see what would happen if I didn't do that and see how it goes.
What I like about that is it feels like a very natural, true expression of what's going on and what you want to write about. And sometimes you're talking about like the songs that you listened to recently, but then you were talking about the power of now and meditation. And then you did a treatise on how you were a Kanye fan, but now you've kind of stepped back on that. And it was actually one of my favorite philosophical pieces on cancel culture I've ever read. And it was just so insightful and from the inside of your experience and kind of working through things in culture. I just really loved it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And I think like, you know, even if it's not like such a, you know, Real Housewives recaps, which I love, but like, even if it's not that, like you're saying things fall into a sort of collection or vibe where it's like, like I think there is so much pop culture influence in the things I write about that you can always expect certain elements and it won't be totally disparate, but like you're not always like, okay, I only get this one thing. So I'm happy to hear that you're enjoying it and getting something from it. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do in fact read it, even though sometimes I just open it.
I can tell.
It sits there.
You referenced at least 3 entries.
I was just going to say, I'm like,
I think you're 3-star.
I'm like a 3-star friend, I'm hoping.
I should go check. Just Payne, how are you doing?
Yeah, that is the danger too, is like the, I don't know, the like middle school girl in me is like, who opened my stuff? Who liked my stuff?
Oh, it's awful.
And so I have to like stop that.
Yes.
Just because that's a dangerous headspace for me to be in.
I agree.
Because then it's not about like what you're creating. It's about the numbers and it's like getting likes and things like that.
Yeah, it's a huge, I don't want to say like problem, but it is something that I'm like struggling with because I wanted to create it because I needed to know someone was reading it. Yeah. But I think because of their delivery system, I know exactly who's reading it. And I kind of do Substack release day is always very exciting because I see it, I see people like it. And then after, I have to, I think, just go like after the first hour, I have to shut everything off and not check it every hour to see what's going on. It is not good for anyone. And the people, like I said, the people who liked it will tell you, and you can see like comments and things like that. But the numbers is obnoxious for me to know. Yeah. Great for Substack to know. Great for them to recommend me to other people. Yeah. I can't really check it anymore.
So if somebody loves your stuff, what's kind of like dreamy ideal for you? Is it they like subscribe, comment, and share?
Yeah, and there is a paid option. Okay. I don't push it because at this point, I'm just, it's still like experimenting and seeing like kind of where this could go and how often. I also, since starting it in January, I have posted 10 times, which next year I'd like to do a lot more than that. Mm-hmm. But the people who have subscribed with like a paid option have been awesome. Mm. But yeah, there is that option too, which is always nice. And I've been saying, I promise next year I'll do a lot more posting so you get more bang for your buck too.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So okay. Liking, sharing, ping.
Yeah.
And then a comment that shows something nice.
Yeah.
It's like, I liked XYZ.
Because I think there's a lot of people who, get frustrated with kind of corporate models of creation and want more diversity in voices just generally, or, just content that they really connect with. And so it's helpful sometimes to hear like, okay, great. If I really like this, what do I literally do?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I think that would be great.
Okay. Nice. Sweet. In your Substack, one of the things you talked about, which you also talked about in storytelling, which I appreciate, is kind of how you're navigating anxiety. Is that something you're willing to talk about?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, because you've talked about it openly, and I've found it helpful. Yeah. And I've just really appreciated how vulnerable and transparent you are about that aspect of your life. So can you just kind of take that wherever you'd like to?
Sure. Yeah. I think it's really important. Already, I'm like, anxious about this answer.
I know. I started asking and I was like, I just got anxious asking you about anxiety. So here we go.
I think I didn't have a ton of narratives or direction or help growing up with anxiety. I've had it pretty much as far back as I can remember. And I have very specific moments where I was like, something's up. And I think once I started doing stand-up and really like getting into that scene, everyone has anxiety. And the cool thing about stand-up is you are surrounded by so many people who are so open that way. And I think that's like a bonus of being a comedian, is that you get to meet all these people that share some of those sort of tendencies. And then now that I'm not doing stand-up as much, and going kind of back into the real world, you're like, oh, people are not talking. Like, it's still, again, you kind of feel ashamed again, where you're like, oh, shoot, like I feel that I can't be as honest about this anymore. And I think what I took away from stand-up is I'm going to be honest about this all the time. It helps me navigate my own anxiety, and who knows who needs to hear this. Like, that's lofty, but maybe someone does and benefits from it. I know that I have definitely, from writers and stand-ups over the years, really taken a lot of stuff to heart and just felt less alone through hearing it. I don't think that I necessarily am like doing it as like a vigilante trying to save people from their own anxiety. But like I said, more likely it helps me so much. And I think, especially over the past couple of years, I've had like multiple deaths in my family. And I think like depression and anxiety are so intertwined for me, and talking about it has helped process those things so much more than if I just kind of shut myself off from talking about it, honestly. So it's because it helps me. That's why I'm so vulnerable and open about it.
Yeah.
And I also just think like there's nothing really to be ashamed of, because so many people are going through it. And even if it's not clinically diagnosed, people have shades of it all the time. And I think being ashamed of it is what causes a lot of other harm in relationships and expression. And I think if it's just kind of like, yeah, of course, like anxiety and depression are part of everyday life, then you can kind of focus on the other problems and just like get that out there, that it's just so natural to feel those things. And I think anxiety particularly has kept me from doing so many things. And I think part of it is that in the past I was like, I can't be honest about how I'm feeling, or I'm just not going to do something, instead of thinking about what exactly is preventing me from doing this. So yeah, I think it's just been helpful to be so open about it.
That's really great. Two things that come to mind. First are, I want to come back around to kind of the comedy scene and what that's like and what that experience has been for you. So we're going to come back to that. And the second is just that your exploration of anxiety is so brave, that I love that you are just like leaning into the anxiety and like, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to do what I want. And one of the questions sometimes I ask people is like, what regularly scares you? And so how does that factor into like, whether it's creative fears or literal, kind of out in the world, snakes or traffic or whatever it is, kind of fears. Like, what scares you, and how does having anxiety on top of that factor in, and what do you do?
I think there's a lot of fear of regret for me that really helps propel me into doing things.
Yeah.
I think I take all of those posters like very seriously that are like, live life with no regrets. But I do feel myself like, I just don't want to have something where I'm kind of dwelling on what would have happened if I didn't do it. I think I've done that before, and it is the worst. And so I just want to know that at least I tried. It's also not something that I'm doing all the time, but like having that in the back of my mind. And the more my husband, Jake Arkey, former guest on the podcast, check out his episode. It was great.
Absolutely.
But the more that we talk about wanting to have kids, I think like also I never want to be like that regretful parent that makes their kids feel bad about like their existence, because I'm like, I could have been a star. Like, I never want that sort of thing. And I also don't want to be someone who holds back just because, they feel like they shouldn't. And I don't want to put like my regret on my kids too. So I think about that a lot. And my regret on myself. Like, I don't want that feeling. So
Yeah. And you, like you mentioned, you have had a lot of deaths in the last couple of years
Yeah,
in the middle
tons.
of a very hard year
Yeah.
or couple of years. And, your wedding was supposed to be what?
March
the end of March 2020.
It had many dates. Yeah.
Yes.
Originally, it was going to be
and
at the end of March 2020.
yeah. And so you've had a doozy of a time.
Yeah, a lot of stuff has come up. And I think like a weird thing about anxiety as a side note is that sometimes I'm like, well, yeah, but like, doesn't that happen? Doesn't this happen to everyone? I can't complain. COVID was hard for everyone. And then I do have moments where, my mom died during COVID and my brother just died a couple months ago. And I think I do have moments where I'm like, oh no, like this has been a lot to throw in the mix.
Yeah.
But you still have those moments where you don't want to, I don't know, make it all about you, but still acknowledge how much you're going through. It is a weird, hard balance. And you still have to process grief, and I process grief by talking about it.
Yeah.
And I have found that other people don't like when I do that.
Oh, I appreciate that you do that, because it's, I think you've been a good example in my life to talk about things more and to address things more directly and be more transparent, where I come from a very like taciturn kind of mindset naturally, I think. I grew up like farm kid. Like we don't talk about feelings,
right.
As much. Not that was like my family value. I'm just saying like that culturally, that was like, just like how you dealt with stuff. And so it's, well, this feels a lot healthier.
I think so for me, definitely. But I think sometimes I've talked to people and they're like doing mental and verbal gymnastics to avoid everything. And I'm like, no. I'd love to talk about my dead brother right now. Like, honestly, like, just give me a second to do this. Yeah. Because it's so helpful to me. And like, it's so nice when people at least acknowledge it, at least to me. And just saying, hey, that sounds really tough and I'm sorry. I don't expect people to know exactly or what to say, but saying something matters a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think that's great. So support the Substack. And
ask me about my dead brother.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's how you show love.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I also think there's something about, when you've had some pretty big things in your life, friends that have had cancer or major illness or lost someone early or something like that. I think there's also this like fire that ignites in you that's related to your no regrets of like, okay, let's go. Let's do this. Which I think makes one brave.
Yeah, definitely has played a big role in decisions I've made over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
And so I hate to say it, that it does make you look at how short life is and just think about what you really value. It's also made me think about relationships more so and prioritize them a lot more.
Yeah.
And just be very grateful for my family and friends that are in my life. And sometimes it also makes it so nice to feel like nothing else really matters. It's so weird. It's just nothing matters.
Yeah.
Do you be with the people you love?
You did stand-up comedy for years, which I admire and cannot really comprehend doing. What drew you to it? What did you love about it? And what did that lead you to that now is kind of the direction that you're pointing now?
Yeah, so I started doing it, I'm from Reno, and I started doing it there when I was in college after doing improv for a while. Those, just really quick on small art scenes in small towns, like those were a flat circle of like the same people. I was just like, oh, sometimes the improv people get up on stage and do stand-up. That looks really fun. And I did this cool, creepy thing where I just went to every show and didn't like introduce myself and just like watched like people do stand up. And I was like, one day I will, but I'll be with my improv team. But one day I'll come over and do stand up.
You were a lurker.
I was a lurker.
I love that.
I guess everyone who did improv did stand-up, but then there were stand-ups that were just stand-ups. And I was like, oh, wow, to be one of those. to be free of improv. No, improv very much helped me out. But I was like, okay, I'm going to make my move to stand-up. And then I did it at my college. Like they had some showcase and like 2 of the comedians I'd been stalking were hosting it. And I was like, oh, good. They're the best of the 10 comedians in the city. They're the 2 best. Okay, great. And then I got on there with my friends. 2 of my friends and I did it. We each drank a pitcher of Pabst Blue Ribbon before getting on stage. Great. So bloated. Like my parents came, all my friends. It was very sweet. It was in like a school theater, very sweet. I remember doing well, but I don't remember much else from there. There is a video of it that I will not be posting. But I was like, this was fun. Like this was liberating and cool. And I kept doing it for 10 more years in Reno. And then I moved to San Francisco. I did it there. I did a little bit in LA. And it was great. I think like ultimately I wanted to do something else. And there were parts of like the scene where I was like, I don't know. Like, I think like even if I, became like the best comedian here, I'm like, I don't know if that's what I want. And I'm not really close to that. I need a new medium. Mm-hmm. And so I started doing some storytelling shows. I had been booked for them while doing stand-up. And I was like, these are cool because you can be a little bit more vulnerable and it's not immediately like, oh, I didn't come here for that. So it's like more accepted. And you just like, my favorite types of art are the ones that blend both very seamlessly. So humor and vulnerability. So like Mike Birbiglia, I love him so much. He's like a great comedian, but like so much of his stuff is so serious and vulnerable. But he spins it in a way where you're like, God, that was really funny, depressing, but I liked it, Yeah. And so I think I wanted to do more of that. So my husband, Jake Arkey, previous podcast guest, has been running VAMP, which is a storytelling showcase, part of So Say We All, for 15 years. And when I met him, he was like, this is a great opportunity where you can tell your story, have multimedia behind you. It can be of any tone, but it just has to fit this theme. Mm-hmm. And all of my stories that I've done for VAMP have always had a comedic bent, but some of them more so than others. And so it's been like a very nice outlet to just be able to still be funny on stage, but also be the type of vulnerable I want to be. Mm-hmm. And we're doing a show at Sketchfest on February 1st. Yay! In San Francisco, which is where I did the bulk of my stand-up. So it feels very cool to be on that comedy festival and to be able to tell a story. Like, it's a very nice, like, merging of all worlds and nice culmination of everything. It feels very cool. And I'm definitely telling a story that is the first story I think I ever told for VAMP. So it would have been like in 2019, so 4 years ago. And it was so fun to tell. And it was much funnier than the ones that I've done since. So it's just a straight, like, very funny story about how I used to pretend to be the Olson twins on AOL when I was 7.
That's early.
It's early. I've been working a long time.
Wow. You've been in the game.
Yeah, I've been in showbiz quite a while. I am Mary Ashley, as I said. I basically came up with the whole thing in like the AOL kids-only chat rooms, that it was a myth that there were 2 of them, and there was only one, and it was me. And lots of trouble ensued for my parents, but I had a great time. It really blew up at the time in the AOL kids community.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is so funny looking back on it, but also says so much about like how much I want to be a performer and the type of performer and all this stuff. So yeah.
That's adorable. Yeah, like at that point I was like putting on song and dance numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
And, forcing people to like sit down and watch my performances and directing my friends in make believe. So I love that you were like, I love that like mine was a very natural progression to acting and directing and singing. And yours was a very natural progression to Substack.
Substack, yes,
Actually.
Exactly. I was like, too scared to do what you were just referencing. But I was like, I'll do it online.
And I was like, oh, she's so cool. She's like doing it.
Oh, also,
I love it.
yeah.
Grass is always greener, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, no, yours is cool.
No,
People
yours
saw you.
is cool.
They saw you, Jess.
Oh, fair. That's so funny to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, in addition to the storytelling, you're also doing some creative writing projects.
Yeah.
What are they about? And kind of magic wand, if it could be anything you wanted it to be, what would it be and what would it look like?
Yeah. Right now I'm working on a feature that I've been working on some version of for years about growing up in Reno. It has gone from being like very serious, which is weird because I would never want to write like a gritty drama about growing up in Reno, but I guess that's where it started.
Okay.
Now it's much more like comedic, kind of in line with like Lady Bird, I would say, where it's not like slapsticky, but it's definitely way more comedic than is dramatic. It's not totally autobiographical. It has shades. I think, again, the initial draft is always the one where you're like, this actually happened to me. Everyone's like, it's not a good story, though. And then this one is much more, there are shades that make it funnier or more relatable, but it's not really about my life. But it is about having to decide if you want to live in Reno, this very like lawless, but kind of heart of gold city, or try and strike it on your own. And kind of the pull between staying with what's comfortable and what's homey and what you know, and trying to branch out and see if you can just go ahead and throw caution to the wind and move somewhere else, which I did struggle with. But
yeah. And it's interesting because, I mean, the path you chose in real life brought you to San Francisco and then to LA and still takes you back to Reno. So you've got little pieces of both.
Tons. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of pride for Reno.
I love it.
Yeah.
I've performed in Reno a couple of times and I always thought like, this is such a fun city because it's unlike anywhere else.
Yes.
It really is.
I agree. Even just, still going back, and I think that it's changed a lot since I grew up there for both better and worse ways. But I do really admire it where I've told Jake before that I think the motto of Reno is, you think you're better than me? Like that like you could say anything and they'd say, no one cares about that. We're in Reno. We care about what's going on here. We don't care about what you're doing in LA. We don't have anything. But I will say, if one of their own does get famous, they do the immediate, like, they claim them. But if you came back, like Colin Kaepernick and I went to college together. I did not know him, but we did go to college at the same time. Yeah. People claim him, but if he came into a bar, people go, oh, you think you're cool?
That's so funny. I love that. So, I'll brag about you, but not to you.
Not to you. You always got to take him down a peg. It's like, well,
tall poppy syndrome.
Exactly,
cut that head off.
Exactly.
That's so funny. I remember touring there and like waking up. I think we stayed in a casino, and so we woke up and like had like the continental breakfast, and there was a guy that like wandered from the slots over and like got a pitcher of beer and unlimited crab cakes for breakfast. I was just like, this is so great.
Yeah, the Reno breakfast. Great.
Great.
Yeah,
fantastic.
There is no like official closing time for bars. So they can stay open all night. And there was a lot of stuff, honestly, of the lawless ilk that when I went to California, I was like, what do you mean I can't buy beers at 3 a.m? I remember talking to a 7-Eleven cashier, which, gives a lot of insight into what I was doing when I moved. I was like, living the Reno life, but somewhere else. And I was like, no, but I'm going to pay you. I don't get what the problem is. And I remember being like, I just can't, girl, I can't sell them. I can't. I'm like, this is something else. Wait till they hear about this at the Silver Legacy. But I was just like, God, California doesn't know how to party at all.
That's so
Tupac
funny.
is wrong.
Oh, man. And you grew up in a bar, and you have a great Substack about this, and your how you love bars. Your relationship with alcohol has shifted over time, but you love bars.
Yeah.
How do you think that's given you kind of your unique perspective or contributed to it?
I do. I love a bar, and for all of the reasons that are, key to it, you can kind of just do. All bars are a little bit lawless, no matter where they are.
Yeah,
and you can. experience a lot of emotions very openly, and it's kind of agreed upon that that's what you're there to do.
Yeah.
I also think that I've had so many people in my life who have struggled with alcoholism, or friends that, you know, as you get older, you kind of realize that there's no, I don't know, there's textbook definitions of alcoholism, and then there's when you see it in the world and
In the wild.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of my friends, and myself included, no one's 100% comfortable with their relationship with alcohol sometimes. And it's even people who have quit alcohol, it's because they were like, I didn't like it. I didn't like what was happening with me. And I think I've always had a lot of sympathy for that growing up. And I think I've just seen so many people struggle with it. And in a bar, I think you see this struggle and it's a lot more humanized. And so I think the reason why I am also kind of drawn to those types of stories too, and stuff that I've like explored through my own writing, is just because I think it also needs to be explored that it's not just one type of character or whatever that alcoholism is portrayed in the media or just at all. And that it's so it's so rampant and so ubiquitous within our culture. And so I think there's the bar parts that I love that allow you to be yourself, and also just thinking about like how alcohol, I don't know, like can change how people are, but it can also just be like something that everyone does, and kind of those like shades and acknowledging that it's okay sometimes, where I think our culture is very quick to be like, you either don't do it at all, which is the best you could do. I think sometimes that's how it feels.
Yeah.
Or you have one drink and you are also very heralded. Or you drink a lot, which is crazy because it's not like it's sold everywhere, you know? It's not like it's so accessible. So I think like the people's relationship with alcohol has always just been so interesting to me too. Very roundabout way to say love bars for their conflicted relationships. And yeah.
Yeah, and I know a lot of friends of mine who are sober creatives. There's a huge community of sober creatives, and I think there's something about, I didn't realize how many creative people are so sensitive, and so that is part of what pulls them, and either trying to like feel more comfortable in social situations, or trying to cut down on the anxiety a little bit, or are in some way like, you know, drawn to the intensity of the moment, but also the blunting of the sensitivity. And so I think it's something that comes up more often in creative circles than we realize. And so it's good to, you know, talk about and know that it's there, and not glorify alcohol, but also realize that it's existed with humanity for most of humanity.
Right.
And like, you know, elephants and birds get drunk. And like, you know, like it's kind of a, you know, it is a thing that happens. And so why do we do that? And sometimes it's just that allowing yourself to be vulnerable, or allowing yourself to express emotions in a public place. So I really liked your exploration of that. I thought that was cool.
Yeah. I think it's I think it's also that alcohol somehow has this damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of effect on creatives, but also just people in general, where it's like, oh, you don't drink? Why? What happened? Or you drink too much? Why? You have to be like the best, like the model alcohol drinker. There really is no such thing.
Yeah.
And so I think like that's always worth kind of exploring more too.
Yeah. But I think it's more interesting in the nuance than the gray.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay, so assuming your film gets made, who makes it? Who's involved? Who's the star? Are you in it? What are some of the fun details?
It's it's funny that even in the dream scenario, I'm like, I'd be too old to play the main character, which is true. I mean, the main character is probably like 20 in my dream scenario. So I wouldn't play them, but I'd play like a townsperson in Reno. And
you're like a Tina Fey. Like you put yourself in it.
Oh, totally. Yes. Yeah. That's like a perfect, I actually thought that I would be a teacher in like the it's some Reno school that the main character would interact with. Many teachers about town in Reno that very legendary. I hope to be more legendary in my telling and less notorious. So we'll stick to that. And then I brought up Lady Bird. I think Greta Gerwig is great. I would love her to direct.
Yeah.
And yeah, kind of have that same tone. So yeah, those would be the dream scenarios. Obviously, very shot in Reno, using all the vendors and places I love. And
I love it.
Yeah.
Hometown hero.
Yes. Oh, one day. But they would never tell me that. So,
No.
Which is great. You always stay humble.
That's how you know it's real.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So do you have any influences that have led you to where you are, or anybody that we should go check out?
Like I said, Mike Birbiglia, new special. It's very good. We saw it live and now it's on Netflix. So check it out, The Old Man in the Pool. And let's see, who else have I been really liking recently? Podcasts, I know, obviously, big podcast fan.
Yeah.
You are too. And so I've been loving Talk Easy with Sam Fragoso.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Oh, I think you would love it. It's
Nice.
very similar in setup where he plays records and interviews all the big names of the day. He's very young. He's 27, but he has this very old school mentality. You think he's a lot older. And then sometimes he'll drop in. He has this very silky voice too. And he'll drop in me being 27. What can you offer? You're whoa. So yeah, his podcast is great. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything
I want to
specific.
shake up my music in 2024.
Oh,
Who
yeah.
are 3 people I should listen to?
Oh my God, amazing question. So Petey, I talk about Petey all day long. He is known for having a big TikTok. I found him through his music purist, Petey Purist right here. His music is so good. It's electronic and also kind of garage band and very hometown hero-ish lyrics about just outgrowing your hometown, but also wanting to or having anxiety about being someone else. So that's cool. Love Petey. He's great. Who else have I? If you haven't listened to Olivia Rodrigo's newest album, very good as well.
I actually this is a super weird thing. I taught at a studio she went to, the Young Actors Studio, and I subbed there a lot. And so Jeff, my friend that runs it, said, "Oh yeah, I think you subbed for her." So, I mean, she would have been 15, and she would have just been
"You are why she's where she's
at." I cannot
she said,
believe.
I had a great sub.
Oh yeah, clearly that one day on a Saturday, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
No, but it's so funny because I saw her and I was like, she looks so familiar. And I don't know. I might have taught her.
Wow.
And I love her music. I think she's so great.
Good. Yeah. I love the latest album a lot. I play that constantly.
I'm a sucker for Vampire. Yeah.
Yes. I just played it today.
Yeah.
Really good. Really good treadmill music because it gets you going.
Yeah.
So that's what I was doing.
Okay. That's good. That's good.
And then Snail Mail is a band that I think Snail Mail is one person though. It's one of those where one person.
They trick you.
And really good. Also feels very callback to 90s grunge, but again, she's probably 25.
Okay.
So I love a young person pretending to be old, I guess. Because honestly, 3 out of 4 of those recommendations, Sam Fragoso and then Olivia Rodrigo and Snail Mail, all kind of young, but old stuff that I can relate to, so.
Nice. Nice. Jaded but young.
Yeah, love that. Love that vibe.
Fantastic. Okay. And then for my listeners or viewers, hello. What is your creator's challenge?
Okay. So I've been doing this since probably before I was creating, but I wish for everyone to just put in headphones and dance by yourself to whatever moves you. I've been doing it since I was little, but I still do it all the time. And it really helps me work through things, even if I'm just why was that thing earlier upsetting to me? Or I'm okay, for my screenplay, what would be, it helps me visualize a lot too. And I have go-to songs and then new ones will come on and be definitely could dance to that.
Nice. I love it.
Dancing alone, as much as you can do it, great. It's very embarrassing to be caught, but you'll get through it.
It's very like, teenage girl, shut the door, pump the jams.
Yeah, hairbrush.
Yes.
Maybe, but yeah.
Yeah.
It helps me so much.
Okay, I love it. Free all of that.
Yes.
Somatic tension.
Yeah, honestly, helps a lot.
That makes a lot of sense. And like so much of our emotion gets stuck physically.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we can talk about it to get it out and we can try to express it artistically, but also just the act of moving releases so much.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm a big science nerd, and there's a lot of science about kind of changing our visual patterns and our movement patterns does have a reverse effect to affect our mood in the way that like your mood affects how you move and how you sit and your body language. You can put a pencil between your teeth and just hold it there for a little bit, and it will make you happier because it puts your muscles into a smile.
Wow.
And so you get some of the brain chemicals, and all of Amy Cuddy's stuff about presence and like power poses and stuff works because of this. So science behind this week's Creators Challenge.
There we go. Yeah. That's why it works.
Nice. And where can people find you and your Substack? And
Substack, the star of the show. samdisalvo.substack.com.
And that's SAMDISALVO.
You got it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a TikTok. I post maybe once a month, if that. If you love that kind of sporadic content, you can find me at Hey, It's Sam from School. It was what I came up with the day that I got a TikTok and we're going with it. And I also have an Instagram, which is at SamDiSalvo, but with 3 O's. So SAMDISALVOOO.
Which I like that you just have the sporadic runs of the thing. For a while you were DJ's wife, and we got some behind the scenes content, and that was one of my favorite little mini series I've ever seen.
Oh, thank you. A lot of people liked it, but now Jake doesn't DJ anymore.
I know. We won't tell anybody.
No. So I guess I'll always be the DJ's wife.
Yeah, that's true. She can come back. But it's great because I always look for you for recommendations and surprises, and I love that freshness.
Wow. Awesome.
So
thank you.
Sam DiSalvo, thank you so much. You're the best.
Thank you, Jessica Payne.
Cheers. Join the community and share your creative challenges on Instagram and Facebook at Creators Cafe by Kika Labs. And also check out my website, kikalabs.com, KIKALABS.com, to sign up for the mailing list so you always know when a new podcast is released, and to check out my coaching and digital courses to help you be a more confident and joyful creator.